Goddamn, winter allergies. Prolonged exposure to ice barriers will not recommend to anyone. What is this? Alternative methods? Crystals? Crystal blessing, in fact. Never been the religious type when it comes to allergies and healing. Might as well try it out. Could be a hidden gem. Before I say anything, I feel the need to point out that prior to doing research for this video, my experience with playing Crystal Beast as a whole was less than Sawatari's win record against relevant characters in Arc 5. So excuse me if I miss out on any sick Dark Doriado techs. Anyway, Crystal Beasts are a deck piloted by Johan Anderson, and much like the character, they're one of the gayer remnants of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, what with the whole rainbow motif as well as a particularly happy playstyle. By that I mean, the effects of Crystal Beasts are very unique in that they rely on putting monsters into the back row, which outside of equip-based archetypes like Vylons, Regunity or Insectors, was never really revisited until artifacts became a thing. However, while artifacts kept up their presence in the meta over the years, Crystal Beasts often had to struggle with making use of newer summoning methods to push themselves to any kind of relevance. This is to an extent still the case, seeing how their newer link hero support focuses a lot more on swarming the field as opposed to making use of their unique mechanics. Then again, that's how you win these days. So let's dig through the history as well as the upsides and downsides of these colorful boys by starting off with the first 7 monsters. Now, I know that's a lot, but the basic Crystal Beasts, which would be Ruby Carbuncle, Emerald Tortoise, Amethyst Cat, Cobalt Eagle, Topaz Tiger, Ember Mammoth, and Sapphire Pegasus, all share the same effect segment. If this face-up card is destroyed while it's in a monster card zone, you can place it face up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell card instead of sending it to the graveyard. Right off the bat, this is a property that's not shared by many other cards. In fact, I think I can count them on the fingers of my one hand, and during the GX era it was used as a potential recovery option after a beatdown, while over the following years it became a way to set up your field for extra deck plays. I will elaborate on this, but as far as their individual properties go, Ruby Carbuncle is a level 3 light fairy with 300 attack and defense, and when it's special summoned, you can special summon as many Crystal Beast cards as possible from your spell and trap zone. Emerald Tortoise is a level 3 water aqua with 600 attack and 2000 defense, and once per turn, you can target one monster you control that attack this turn, change that target to defense position. Amethyst Cat is a level 3 earth beast with 1200 attack and 400 defense. It can attack directly, but all damage it deals when doing so is halved. Cobalt Eagle is a level 4 wind winged beast which allows you to, once per turn, target one face-up Crystal Beast card you control and return it to the top of the deck. Topaz Tiger is a level 4 earth beast with 1600 attack and 1000 defense, and when it attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 400 attack during the damage step only. Ember Mammoth is another level 4 earth beast. He's got 1700 attack and 1600 defense, and allows you to change the attack target from another Crystal Beast monster to itself. And finally, Sapphire Pegasus is a wind beast with 1800 attack and 1200 defense, and when it's summoned, you can place one Crystal Beast monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell card. As far as effects go, one may notice that 5 out of these 7 are mostly hot garbage. Carbuncle and Pegasus are your primary playmakers, and you will rarely ever want to run any less than 3 of them, and while Cobalt Eagle has a very specific utility regarding a certain spell card, most of the time the only reason you would want to run any of the other Crystal Boys is because of their level, type or attribute, whichever you need for your extra deck toolbox. Tiger's attack increase was irrelevant since 2007, anything stronger than Ojamas will have no problems running over Mammoth, Cat is bad by the standards of Duel Links, and Tortoise has one of the most bizarre position changing conditions I've ever seen. If it wasn't for Pegasus, which allows for almost unprecedented searching, and Ruby, which gives you access to potentially massive recovery or swarming, I'm pretty sure the archetype would have fallen out of relevance faster than my dancing career. Anyway, as far as the basic lineup goes, you will never want to run any less than 3 Pegasus and Carbuncle, while the ratios of the other ones vary depending on your build. However, there's also a certain reason to run all 7 of them, but it's not exactly optimal. Rainbow Dragon, because it was GX and every archetype had to have a dragon, is a level 10 light dragon with 4000 attack and 0 defense, and the following effect. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by having 7 Crystal Beast cards with different names on your field or in your graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card cannot activate its effects the turn it's special summoned. During either player's turn, you can send all Crystal Beast monsters you control to the graveyard. This card gains 1000 attack for each card sent. You can banish all Crystal Beast monsters in your graveyard, shuffle all cards on the field into the deck. Was this what was over the rainbow? Frankly? Not impressed? Yeah, for the longest time, Gilbert Baker's persona over here was pretty difficult to summon, let alone be considered competitive in any way, mainly due to the confusing restriction on the effects. If it manages to survive the opponent's turn, one of said effects just makes this already huge beater an even bigger one, and while the other one can be devastating, it completely drains your resources to pull off and gives the opponent the first chance to recover. Rainbow Dragon was a gimmicky choice in casual variants, and while it never really ascended beyond that, you could make some funky plays by overlaying them into Gustav Max later on, and some later support made dedicated Rainbow Dragon builds a lot more viable. Certainly more viable than when their primary boss monster tech choice was Hamon. Yeah, they were really desperate for beatsticks. However, another very GX thing were edgy, dark counterparts for the inner god inside of you, and so came Rainbow Dark Dragon, a clumsy adaptation of an anime monster which represented a corrupted version of Rainbow Dragon while Johan was under the control of Yubel. Fellas, is it gay if you're being mind-controlled by an alien hermaphrodite? It has the same type and stats as Rainbow Dragon, except its dark attribute, cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned by banishing 7 dark monsters with different names from your graveyard. You can banish all other dark monsters you control and in your graveyard. This card gains 500 attack for each card banished this way. At the cost of losing the field wipe effect, you get a monster that's arguably easier to summon, or at least easier to set up before the new wave of Crystal Beast support. But that's just what it is, a generic dark boss monster unrelated to the archetype, whereas in the anime you had an entire alternate set of monsters named Advanced Crystal Beasts, which were essentially just Crystal Beasts in fetish gear. As far as this concept goes, the only loose connection between the real game and the anime is their darkness-themed field spell, but not just any darkness.
This is Advanced Darkness.
All Crystal Beast monsters on the field and in the graveyard become dark. If Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon attacks, negate the effects of the attack target during that battle phase. During damage calculation, if a Crystal Beast monster you control battles and you would take damage, you can send one Crystal Beast monster from your deck to the graveyard, you take no battle damage from that battle. Just to get it out of the way as soon as possible, the Archetype already has a field spell leagues better than this gimmicky piece of crap, so unless you're being a clown with set rotation, you're gonna wanna ignore this one, as well as the Pastel God Overlord over here. There's also a Malefic Rainbow Dragon, who I care enough to mention, but not nearly enough to talk about. It's just a Malefic monster with the usual summoning condition and no special effects. The reason why I'm mentioning him though is because I'll delve into a certain localization screw-up related to the Rainbow Dragon series of monsters, which will become slightly evident with the effect of their first Pendulum monster. This is also the first Pendulum monster ever featured in a Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! Archetype review.
Please clap.
Crystal Vanguard is a level 3 dark spellcaster with 1300 attack and 1000 defense, scale 5, and his pendulum effect is that your opponent cannot target Crystal Beast cards you control, or Ultimate Crystal God monsters, Rainbow Dragon, or Rainbow Dark Dragon in your monster zone with card effects. His monster effect is that you can tribute this card, add one Crystal Beast or Ultimate Crystal God monster, Crystal Spell or Trap, Rainbow Dragon, or Rainbow Dark Dragon from your deck to your hand, except Crystal Counter or Violet Crystal. What should have been a simple protection slash consistency boosting effect turned into a localization mishap museum, but we'll get to that. As for the effect itself, the protection is decent, but the problem is that you'll most often prefer using your Crystal Beast as Link or Xyz material, so they would rarely be prone to the opponent's effects, and while the second effect searches your literal entire archetype, it may take up your normal summon, then it's outclassed by some newer spell and trap support. Not to mention, with the new Master Rule in place, 2 Pendulum monsters in your back row would do a lot more harm than good to the Crystal Beast playstyle. Roughly the same could be said about the second Pendulum monster, Crystal Protector, a level 4 fire warrior with 1500 attack and 1800 defense, scale 2, whose pendulum effect says, each turn the first Crystal Beast card, Ultimate Crystal God monster, Rainbow Dragon, and or Rainbow Dark Dragon you control that will be destroyed by a card effect is not destroyed. As for the monster effect, during damage calculation, if your Crystal Beast monster battles an opponent's monster, quick effect, you can tribute this card from your hand or field, your battling monster's attack and defense each become double its original attack and defense during that damage calculation only, but it is destroyed at the end of this damage step. Again, the protection itself is tolerable but sort of unnecessary, and while the crane-like monster effect enables you to catch the opponent off guard and switch the monster into back row at the end of the damage step, you might not necessarily want the destruction to happen, and as already said, Crystal Beasts don't tend to partake in battle too often. So, as for that localization problem, Ultimate Crystal God is the OCG prefix to Rainbow Dragon, Rainbow Dark Dragon, as well as their newest fusion monster, which we'll get to soon enough. And because the TCG decided to leave it out when translating these names, we now have a bunch of cards that list several monsters as opposed to one archetype. This leads not only to less coherent effect text, but also gameplay issues. Going by logic, you would think Fusion Conscription is able to search Rainbow Dragon as a material for Rainbow Neos, given that its name is clearly stated as one of the materials. However, this is not the case because the Japanese edition of the card states the requirement for an Ultimate Gem God monster, instead of specifically Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon. The best workaround would have been to name the archetype Rainbow Dragon, then instead of Rainbow Dark Dragon call it Dark Rainbow Dragon, and rename Malefic Rainbow Dragon to Rainbow Malefic Dragon, since he doesn't belong to the Ultimate Gem God lineup. Given that Protector and Vanguard are still not in the TCG 3 years after their release, and Legend Duelist 2 is still a long way from the TCG, we have no idea how the final translation is gonna turn out. Their newest and final monster is Ultimate Crystal God Rainbow Overdragon, a level 12 with 4000 attack and 0 defense, requires 7 Crystal Beast monsters, and has the following effect. Must be either fusion summoned or special summoned by attributing one Ultimate Crystal God monster, Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon you control that is level 10, in which case you do not use polymerization. Once per turn, you can banish one Crystal Beast monster from your graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the banished monster's attack until the end of this turn. During either player's turn, you can tribute this fusion summoned card, shuffle all cards on the field into the deck. Now, this is a Skittle Serpent nobody really saw coming, primarily because Crystal Beasts never had a focus on fusion, even though it would have made a lot more sense for the original dragon to be a fusion monster. However, while definitely being a modernized version of the first edition, it's not exactly much more than that. First of all, it requires a grand total of 7 Crystal Beasts, and while they don't have to be different names, it's fairly difficult to round up 7 of them along with a fusion spell, so you'll most likely be forced to run the bad members of the archetype in order to use their specific fusion card which requires them. The banish effect is not really impressive since draining your resources to boost a 4k attacker is not a good idea unless you're trying to get over the lightning. It still affects your field as well, and you cannot activate it if you summoned Rainbow Overdragon by tributing the original, which was just a really confusing design choice given that it's arguably a harder way to summon it. It's kinda baffling just how similar the effect is to the first Rainbow Dragon despite being released over 10 years later, but if you're really enthusiastic about gimmicky archetypal boss monsters, Rainbow Overdragon can make for a decently silly dedicated build, given that Crystal Beasts are more consistent nowadays than ever before. Frankly, I just consider it a waste of amazing artwork, but just to show that they really wanted you to summon this thing, before we go to the spell and trap lineup, let's cover their archetypal fusion trap. Yes, a fusion trap, because apparently D-Fusion had such an amazing reception. Okay, to be fair, Ultimate Crystal Formation does have a reason to be a trap card. When your Crystal Beast monster is destroyed by battle, send 7 Crystal Beast cards with different names from your hand, deck, and or face up from your field to the graveyard. Special summon one Ultimate Crystal God fusion monster from your extra deck. This is treated as a fusion summon. If a face-up Ultimate Crystal God monster, Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon leaves your monster zone because of an opponent's card effect and is still in your possession, you can banish this card from the graveyard. Place any number of Crystal Beast monsters from your graveyard in your spell and trap zone face up as continuous spells. I associate with the majority of Crystal Beast players in that I am fairly torn on this one. On one hand, it turns the idea of attacking a Crystal Beast monster with one back row from a harmless pushover to the card game equivalent of doing jumping jacks in a room plastered with C4 explosives. It takes resources from the hand, field, and the deck and helps out immensely if the opponent manages to get rid of the Rainbow Dragon before you do anything useful with it. But on the other hand, it relies on your opponent making a suboptimal play. I mean, come on, that Crystal Beast is gonna leave the field before the battle phase even starts. It requires you to run all 7 monsters, which can lead to a case of animal overpopulation in your hand, and if a one-off Crystal Beast you run is already in the graveyard, the card is borderline useless. It's a funny little trap that can lead to a big surprise, but it's not worth running it more than one, mainly due to being situational and generally outclassed by some of the better support. So let's take a look at their spells, starting off with the newest one, Rainbow Bridge. Add one crystal, spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except the ones we fucked up translating. Literally run 3 of this one at all times, it's consistency boosting that most archetypes would kill for.
God, I wish that for me.
You run it primarily to get access to the other new piece of support, Crystal Bonds.
Aww.
Add one Crystal Beast monster from your deck to your hand, and place one Crystal Beast monster with a different name from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. You can only activate 1 Crystal Bonds per turn. This card is an absolute masterpiece and should never be ran at any less than 3, hell I would run 4 if I could. This is your primary playmaker and it sets up combos for a huge number of plays Crystal Beast could only dream of up until this point. It has especially amazing synergy with Crystal Beacon, which allows you to special summon 1 Crystal Beast monster from your deck if you have 2 or more Crystal Beast cards in your spell spell and trap zone. Bonds and Beacon are a 2-card combo for Skull Deed with all effects, which gives the deck even more consistency, as well as amazing link versatility. Yeah, sure, you need to run some of the less optimal Crystal Beasts and you really don't want them in your hand, but it usually pays off, definitely more than focusing on that other dragon. Run all of these at 3 because they're essentially the deck's heart and soul. Slightly less useful is Crystal Promise. Target one Crystal Beast card in your spell and trap zone, special summon that target. This one comes down to personal preference. Sometimes it's perfect, such as in the case of Carbuncle or Pegasus, but sometimes it's completely useless. There are of course other ways to summon the beast from your spell and trap zone, but given that the card is searchable nowadays, run a few if you feel like it. Crystal Blessing allows you to target up to 2 Crystal Beast monsters in your graveyard and place them face up in your spell and trap zone as continuous spell cards. Not exactly a monster reborn, but offers decent recovery, at least when it's not bricking your hand. It can either enable further plays or do absolutely nothing of significance. If you're running it, it's fine at 1. Now, Rare Value is an interesting one. If there are 2 or more face-up Crystal Beast cards in your spell and trap zone, your opponent chooses one of them and sends it to the graveyard, then you draw 2 cards. Not exactly a Destiny draw, but definitely one of the better archetypal draw cards from the GX era. It doesn't require too much setup and it's a lot more consistent to pull off nowadays, however it's not searchable, it's prone to bricking, and you might not always benefit from drawing 2 cards if your opponent chooses to send an important Crystal Beast to the graveyard. Run by preference. Crystal Abundance is their final normal spell and has the following effect. Send 4 Crystal Beast cards from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, send all cards on the field to the graveyard, then special summon as many Crystal Beast monsters as possible from your graveyard, up to the number of cards your opponent controlled that were sent to the graveyard by this card's effect. Well, that's a searchable field nuke. It takes a bit of effort to activate, but it essentially wipes the field in a spectacular gay explosion. It doesn't target or destroy, and it allows you to continue your plays depending on the amount of damage done. Again, very much a personal preference kind of card, but it can be extremely fun to do. Crystal Tree is a continuous spell, and each time a Crystal Beast monster is placed in either player's spell and trap zone, place 1 crystal counter on this card. You can send this card to the graveyard, take a number of Crystal Beast monsters from your deck equal to the number of crystal counters that were on this card, then place those monsters face up in your spell and trap zone as continuous spell cards. Usually I would immediately dismiss a card if it involves usage of counters in an archetype completely unrelated to counters, because, you know, most of the time they're garbage. But Crystal Tree is actually an essential play extender and makes the Bonds and Beacon combo immensely more powerful, leading to a good 5 monsters, allowing for multiple Xyz and Link plays. Yeah, I know 3 cards for 5 monsters is not really a big deal nowadays where you can Horakti with 1 card, but it's a shitty GX archetype using their dumbass mechanic to push themselves to some kind of relevance in the modern age, so I'll take what I can get. 3 can be cloggy, 2 is usually fine, and what the hell is this doing in Duel Links? That back row is not comfortable. Now for their only quick play spell card. Somewhere over the rainbow! If a monster whose original name is Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon activated its effect this turn while you controlled it, special summon any number of Crystal Beast monsters with different names from your deck. Okay, so first of all, yes, the OCG version of the card does specifically state the names of the 2 dragons instead of the ultimate Crystal God archetype. I checked. Apparently it also lets me summon big bears? I presume this was done to safeguard this fairly powerful effect from being abused by the likes of Phantom of Chaos, which is a noble endeavor that just also happens to make the card almost useless. Until you manage to summon one of the dragons, which is already a pain in the ass by itself, the card does absolutely nothing, and by the time you have one on the field, most of your Crystal Beasts are already out of the deck, and it even has the audacity to require them to be different names. I don't think anyone cares this wasn't brought to the TCG. Crystal Release is an equip spell which you can equip only to a Crystal Beast monster. It gains 800 attack, and if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can place 1 Crystal Beast monster from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell card. It used to be decent during slower formats, seeing how it could turn Pegasus into a massive level 4 beater and offered some recovery when destroyed. However, there's not much incentive to run it nowadays because most Crystal Beasts aren't really meant for battle and the card misses timing when the monster it's equipped to is used as material for a summon. But as for their main field spell, oh boy, there's a lot to talk about here. Ancient City Rainbow Ruins requires you to control a certain amount of Crystal Beast cards in your spell and trap zone to apply its effects. 1 or more. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects. 2 or more. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can halve the battle damage you take. 3 or more. During either player's turn, when a spell trap card is activated, you can send 1 Crystal Beast monster you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. 4 or more. Once per turn during your main phase, you can draw 1 card. 5. Once per turn during your main phase, you can target 1 Crystal Beast card in your spell and trap zone, special summon that target. The fact that something like this came out of the GX era, where the standard for field spells was crap like Otherworld DA Zone, really solidifies the impression that Crystal Beasts were really a diamond in the rough, pardon my pun. The 1 or more effect is decent protection, 2 or more is not too amazing, 3 or more is pretty good negation even though it requires you to tribute your Crystal Beast in monster form, the 4th effect is literally just a +1, so yes please, and while the 5th effect is rarely pulled off, it was often good enough to jumpstart you right back into the game with Carbuncle. Nowadays it's not as good as it used to be, really the most relevant effects are the 4th and 5th one, but it's definitely not a horrible card and could make for a decent reason to run terraforming in a more casual build. Just to make sure how proud they were of making this card, here's their first trap, Last Resort. Activate only when your opponent's monster declares an attack. You can select one Ancient City Rainbow Ruins from your deck and activate it. If your opponent had an active field spell when this card was activated, they can draw 1 card. I really appreciate the inclusivity in your last effect, but if I wanna activate field spells with a trap, I'm gonna run Metaverse. It's also nice how that one comes without a potential plus for the opponent. Rainbow Path can also be activated when your opponent declares an attack. Send 1 Crystal Beast card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard to target the attacking monster, negate the attack, then you can add 1 Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon from your deck to your hand. Naturally, it's supposed to state Ultimate Crystal God monster, but this is based on the main deck, so who cares. Also, it's bad. Modern variants of Rainbow Dragon Turbo would much rather access the big boy as quickly as possible instead of relying on the opponent attacking while you have a Crystal Beast in the back row. Besides, if they're gonna run a trap, it's gonna be Rainbow Gravity. If you have 7 Crystal Beast cards with different names on the field or in your graveyard, special summon 1 Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon from your deck or graveyard, ignoring the summoning conditions. This is essentially an additional copy of Rainbow Dragon in your deck, and about as dead in your hand as a Rainbow Dragon when you don't have enough setup to summon it yet. Still decent to use at the end of the opponent's turn so that you can actually apply the effects of the dragon as soon as your turn comes up. Running some of these in Rainbow Dragon Turbo is a decent idea. Playing Rainbow Dragon Turbo is not. Crystal Counter, which is not a counter trap, lets you send all cards in your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, then place as many Crystal Beast monsters as possible from your graveyard in your spell and trap zone face up as continuous spell cards. During the end phase, destroy all face up Crystal Beast cards you control. Oh, I get it, it's called Crystal Counter because it's a counter to your own fucking deck. Sure, it's a mass back row swarm, but at the cost of removing all your spells and traps and wiping all your Crystal Beasts during the end phase, monsters included? Give me a break. Crystal Pair is a trap that can be activated when a Crystal Beast monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard. Place 1 Crystal Beast monster from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell card, then you take no battle damage for the rest of this turn. I get the idea behind it, letting a Crystal Beast you didn't want in the back row go to the graveyard and swapping it with a beast you would prefer in the spell and trap zone, but again, a battle trap is not something this archetype can consistently rely on, even with the whole battle damage negation. Crystal RAIGEKI allows you to send 1 Crystal Beast card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard to target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy that target. Well, I wouldn't really say it lives up to the legacy of its name, but it was decent removal when the archetype was less focused on spamming. Nowadays though, they would much rather rely on generic Exodeck monsters for their control effects. And their final card is Crystal HOARD. It's a continuous trap with the following effect. Once per turn, if a face-up Crystal Beast monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon 1 Crystal Beast monster from your deck. You can send this face-up card from the field to the graveyard, then target 1 Crystal Beast card you control and 1 other card on the field, return them to the hand. You cannot activate these effects in the same chain. Unlike the Pendulums, it's a crying shame this never came to the TCG because it's a genuinely good card. Unlike the majority of Crystal Beast cards that focus on battle or destruction, you're bound to get more mileage out of this one due to it being a continuous trap. It gives you quicker access to Pegasus and even allows for some quick removal which the archetype was desperate for. In decks not focused on Rainbow Dragon, this is pretty much the only Crystal Beast trap worth running, so here's hoping that it shows up in the West at some point soon enough. Let's hand out some Crystal Grades now. Their consistency wasn't really a selling point up until the new support, and while they can definitely still brick, I don't think anything less than a green is justified given how generous I was in this category with aliens. Power though, aside from Rainbow Dragon, who shows up less often than Halley's Comet, there's not really much to consider here. While their comeback ability relies a bit on setup and some very specific cards, they definitely have a multitude of resources to come back into the duel after a beatdown. Any protection they have, which is not much, is rendered irrelevant by the fact that they're not even supposed to stay on the field for too long. However, I'll give them the green in versatility because even though their odd playstyle seems like it would make them destined to be buried under the sands of time, Crystal Beasts found ways to improvise, adapt, and overcome, all thanks to the convenience of the new summoning methods as well as handy new support. Here's a standard modern Crystal Beast build focusing on links and stuff, and here's the silly Rainbow Dragon Turbo. One thing that always stuck out to me about this archetype's relevance over the years is that while the focus shifted away from slower, simpler plays and into the extra deck roly-poly spamfest it is today, nobody really cared about most of their monster effects due to everything but Pegasus and Carbuncle being horribly underwhelming, and the bad ones were usually just ran as necessary extra deck material. While I despise archetypes that use the main deck exclusively as an engine for the extra, which I pointed out many times in the past, I appreciate Crystal Beast for at least being unique about it, and I admire how most of their newer support made them stick to the original idea while giving them further access to the newer summoning mechanics, indicating that Konami is clearly aware of how people intend to play the deck. Not to mention some nostalgic fan service in the form of Rainbow Dragon support, and you got an exceptionally pretty looking archetype that decently managed to stand the test of time in their own special way. Now let's see if that alternative crystal healing method worked. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Frank Yu-Gi-Oh's Archetype Archive. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you stick to the channel and maybe donate to the Patreon if you want to keep it going, and maybe even request an archetype to be reviewed. I know I promised I would stream Duelist of the Roses on November, but something came up and I might have to postpone it to December, but it will happen. Probably, maybe. I promise that it might happen. Regardless, I'm Rata of Frank Yu-Gi-Oh signing off, and I'll see you next time.